Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please take a few moments to quiet yourselves. And we'll begin with the roll call. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Culberson?
Here.
Commissioner Cos, I'm here. All right.
You got Mike on the phone?
Oh, and Commissioner Mike Steben. Sorry, forgot.
Here.
Okay, public comment. We have two people on public comment, I understand, today. First is Janice Kammerlink. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Janice Kammerlink. I live at 15921 Cantrell Road. Thank you, Commissioners Jeff Culbertson, Vicki Katz, Doug Smith, Michael Smith, and Director Voth, Deputy Director Allison, and County Administrator Mark Lowry for this opportunity. My husband and I have lived in our house on 7 acres in this county for 43 years. We moved here for the peaceful country atmosphere. We are also landowners of 40 additional acres. I hope you received our letter and are considering our point of view. Our house is directly across from the Narrow Rock Road where the proposed rodeo is to occur. Our letter outlined many issues we believe would prompt you to vote no to this special use permit. Just a few of the issues briefly include land not zoned for public events, road will not accommodate the traffic will certainly queue onto 158th Street, causing a dangerous driving situation as you round a corner at 50 miles per hour, drive down a small hill, and slow to Cantrell Road. The October 30th, 2021 surprise pop-up rodeo drew 500 to 1,000 vehicles. Our rock road was lined up steadily from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. to enter the rodeo. There is no way to exit quickly in case of fire or emergency. Only one driveway with attached gates is present. The noise was a nuisance and was amplified until 10 p.m. No sales tax was collected, so no monetary benefit to Leavenworth County. There were booths, rodeo items, food, drinks, and we don't know about alcohol sold. There are numerous roosters caged on the property. They were quickly moved in on long trailers on March 5th, 2022. Admission was charged. Vehicles were searched, presumably for weapons. This is a short list of the nuisance items we listed in our letter to you. My niece speaks Spanish, knows Spanish quite well, and she looked at their advertisement, which did include cockfighting, so that would be the purpose of the roosters. We hope you will consider this thoughtfully and vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next is Janice Scott. Welcome.
Thank you for letting us talk, and I'm not as well prepared as she is, but
That's okay.
I'm Janice Scott. My husband Paul Scott. We've lived at our property for 33 years, and we own the 20 acres that butts up. We've got the most property that butts up to where this rodeo is going to be, and so as one of the closest impacted residents as the permit, I would like to discuss with you why I'm against this permit being approved. My main concerns, along with my fellow neighbors, are in the permit is to be approved. It will destroy our peaceful residential area. There will be a magnitude of unnecessary noise, littering, physical pollution, road interference, traffic, safety issues, trespassing on other land, and property values will be decreased to all. When Mr. Avila had his largest rodeo in the year of October 21, he had the rodeo without a permit. Many Leavenworth County violations were broken this day, and was no respect to the neighbors whatsoever. Mr. Avila was charging people to get in the rodeo. Liquor was being sold. We don't know for sure, but I've got pictures of all the trash afterwards. And that licensed food was being sold, the merchandise as well. Not only were the wrongdoings a problem, but there was no EMT or veterinarians on standby, which could be detrimental to anyone in attendance or animals, in case any animals were harmed. Myself, along with many other neighbors, oppose Avila being granted the special use permit of the rodeo for a multitude of reasons, as discussed. We ask that you as well vote against the permit and help the rural parts of Leavenworth County stay that way. Again, all we can do is ask you to vote against this. And I could go on all day long and tell you, and we've sent in a lot of pictures to the commissioners of what we've had and everything. So, all I can do is please vote against this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's, I believe, all we have for public comment today. Administrative business. Do we have anything, Mr. Van Paris?
No.
No.
I do. So, the work session last week, we talked about roads, gravel roads mostly, and bridges. And I would like to ask that we set up a work session for talking about that further. One of the main things I wanted to bring up was, like the map that I created shows, the last 20 years we've paved, all the gravel roads that we've paved have been in the south end of the county. We've only done 1.5 roads in the north end in the last 20 years. So I'm wanting to try to fix that, and if we could have a work session to discuss that.
Well, I thought what I gleaned from our work session last week, that we were in a consensus that the next road taken from gravel to chip seal was going to be in your area.
Okay.
That's what I gleaned from it. Was I wrong?
I'm glad you got that out of it, because I think maybe not all the board did, so that's what I was going to ask for a work session. And not just gravel roads too, but on bridges too. You know how we're talking about having to come up with maybe even a triage map to figure out we can only afford to replace one bridge a year with the current budget that we have. It's simple math. How many bridges we have times how long they're lasting, we need to do 3 bridges a year. So we're going to have to figure out, we're going to start shutting bridges.
Right.
So this work session, I think, would be on 2 things: traffic counts, bridges, and gravel roads getting
Infrastructure in
paved.
general.
KDOT at one time had a program that they would pay a county to get rid of a bridge if they could get rid of a bridge. And we used that program, I believe, over Stranger Creek down there on Metro Avenue.
Linwood?
No, Metro Avenue. There used to be an old truss bridge there.
I now remember we closed one in Linwood. Remember that?
Yeah, and then we closed the one on
Over
off of
Stranger,
Metro
I think.
Avenue down there.
And I think that might be where we're at. So I think a work session's justified.
I don't know
to
if the program
talk
still
about all that.
exists.
I don't have a problem with
No,
a
I
work session,
don't have
just
a
for
problem.
discussing some of those
Okay.
prioritizations and
And I know, a lot of people don't understand, when you plan to pave a gravel road, it's 3 to 5 years out by the time you acquire right-of-way, move assets, utilities.
Unless
Get
it's a dust
everything.
abatement one.
Yeah, so,
Like County Road 30s, where we're talking about moving the utilities now.
I don't expect to be able to do this overnight, but I'm just asking that the next roads that are gravel that we plan on paving be in the north end of the county.
I
So,
thought that was the consensus of the work session last week.
I'm glad.
That's
you
what I
did that,
gleaned
too.
from it. I may be wrong.
Okay. Well, this will just
Maybe
make
I'm-
sure.
well, we can firm
Okay.
that up.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
Firm that
Yeah.
up. That's what I want to do.
And I'd like to
firm that up.
put back on the agenda for next week the agreement we had sent Baser on the 155th Street deal. There were some things in the agreement.
Right.
It was kind of a reach. It was about, waiving sewer hookup fees for Ginger Creek, which is on 166th, and That really has nothing to do with that project. So, and they looked over the agreement and sent it back and would like for us to look at it again. But I think any negotiation should be limited to the 155th Street project, not bring in a sewer district. But we can talk about that then if we can get it on the agenda. Because we really, it's kind of time sensitive on this to get this done for them to get all their the funds available to them through the Mid-America Regional Council and all that. So that's all I had.
David, do you have that so you can share that with? Or do you have?
I will direct Mr. Lawfrey to undertake both of those actions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, do you have anything that you had for admin business?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda unless someone has something they need to have removed.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Roll call. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Culbertson?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So consent
Mike.
agenda.
Got
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
It's hard to see today.
All right, motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved as presented. Let's move down to formal board action. Consider a motion to approve application for the fiscal year 23 Adult and Juvenile Comprehensive Plan. Jamie?
Good morning, Commissioner.
Welcome.
We are requesting from Community Corrections that you approve our applications for fiscal year 23 Adult and Juvenile Comprehensive Plans. I anticipate we'll be back in front of you to fix our budget as soon as we get updates on the additional allocation we will receive once the state figures out how they're going to divide up the $11.8 million for FY23 for salary increases between all 31 community corrections agencies. So.
I think Commissioner Cos and I have looked through all these.
Yeah, we've seen them. So what about you? You have any questions, Jeff?
Nope.
Any questions, Mike? Commissioner Stephen, do you have any questions?
I do not. I support it.
All right.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the 2023 Adult and Juvenile Comprehensive Plans.
Second.
A motion and a second. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culbertson?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That was quick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Consider a motion to approve case number DEV 22-036, a temporary special use permit for Avila Rodeo located on Cantrell Road, and we have to have a hearing for this.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. This is case number DEV-22-036. Oh, no. You just will stay at your seat. The applicants are requesting a temporary special use permit for a single rodeo event. The event is estimated to bring in 400 employees. They are wanting to have...
You mean visitors?
Sorry, visitors, yes, not employees, excuse me. They're asking to have a traditional Mexican rodeo is essentially what this is in traditional dress, and they are requesting that there be food trucks. The applicants have not indicated to us that there will be any retail sales, liquor, or anything of that nature. It does sound like, since we have sent out notification, that additional information has come forward from some neighbors and obviously some substantial complaints regarding an unpermitted rodeo that this particular staff member was not aware of. I was out on leave when that happened, so I apologize for being unaware of that. Staff has provided conditions in the event that the board wishes to recommend approval of this. Staff's typical procedure on a temporary special use permit where the applicant has requested or has operated without getting appropriate permitting is to recommend denial of future permits. So I'll answer any questions that you may have. The applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have as well. This is for a single-time event. This is not a special use permit for them to hold these regularly. This is a one-time temporary special use permit.
So this is Commissioner Stephen.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering on your, from what you're saying is on the recommendation here it says staff recommends approval, but because of this new information coming to light, have you changed that recommendation?
Our typical procedure would be to recommend denial of an event in a situation like this.
Okay, I was just reading the document here. It says staff recommends approval.
Correct, Commissioner. As I stated, I was unaware that an event had occurred that was unpermitted because I was on leave. I do apologize for being unaware of that.
Well, I apologize too, because I was unaware that it happened also.
So after we have learned of that, which was largely after this report was written and after it had already been submitted. So had I known that previously, yes, we would have recommended denial.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. I appreciate it.
And Crystal, on a regular special use permit, one that's not permanent, but it's a 10-year one, not a temporary special use permit, what's the notification timeline for notifying the neighbors?
Sure. So
30.
A special use permit that we see very often, those are guided by state statute, and we're required to notify 20 days out. Temporary special use permits, because they are not we're going to use permanent. A regular special use permit is not necessarily permanent either, but we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
But because a temporary special use permit is for a single event, the notification requirements are left up to the county, and our notification requirements in our regulations is to send them out 7 days prior, which is what we did. But it is different than if it is a special use permit where they're asking to operate for several years.
Okay. I just want to make that clear because I think there was some confusion from some people that thought they should have got like a 20 or 30-day notice.
Yeah.
A temporary permit's a one-time operation, so it's only a 7-day
Correct.
notification.
It's not a public hearing item.
Okay. So it wasn't the mail messed up and didn't get them the notices or anything like that. It's just 7 days for a temporary permit. Okay. I just want to clear that up.
Commissioner Smith, do you have anything?
I did go down and visit. The gates were locked, but I did drive by Saturday. Very aware of the roads. I spent almost 35 years working on the roads down in that area, so I have some concerns about the impact on the neighborhood. Of course, the traffic, the character of the neighborhood is definitely residential. It's not large tracts of farm ground or anything. It's pretty much all residential. I originally thought we would table this until Commissioner Stevens could be here because it is his area, but it used to be mine. But I'm willing to vote on it today. But I'll be honest, I do have some concerns, and I do need to give full disclosure. I do have a relative that owns property next to this, but that's not going to affect how I would vote on it.
Anything else from Mr. Culberson?
I was just going to wait for doing the public.
There is no
There is
public.
Not a public hearing? Okay.
No,
Well,
there's
then-
no
Okay, then I
public hearing
do.
required to this process.
Because it's temporary, right?
Because it's temporary and it's for an event.
So-
as opposed to-
I'm a big don't tread on me guy. I think if you own your own property, you should pretty much be able to do whatever you want on your property. But, and that's a big but, there's a fine line between when you enjoy the private use of your property and it conflicts with your neighbor's property. If this was in the middle of 300 acres on dead end road, we probably wouldn't have anybody protesting it. But this is on a small tract in the middle of a lot of small tracts, very close, hundreds of feet away. So I think that the extraordinary use doesn't fit the zoning for this district. I think if they had this at the county fairgrounds, they lease the county fairgrounds out for things exactly like this. then I think it would work out fine. So that's pretty much where I'm at on it.
Commissioner Stephen, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think, like Commissioner Culberson, I think that we should respect property rights to the highest and largest extent possible. In this case, however, when it is a rezone, adopting a temporary SUP or SUP is a type of a rezone, and I think we have to look at the character of the neighborhood, and it is highly residential. There's a lot of folks that will be impacted, and this is something that I think would affect the character of their neighborhood, and this is not something they anticipated, and it doesn't conform to the zoning, and we're not required to allow this. So I really, because of the character of the neighborhood issue, I think, I agree. I'd be more than happy to even help the folks contact the fair board and coordinate trying to get this put at the fairgrounds and see if we could get this event at a location where it is more appropriate. But I'm not going to support the temporary special use permit.
Back to the traffic. We had Stillwell Road, not too far from this place, had 350 cars a day on it as our traffic counts, and the road was impossible to maintain. We ended up paving the road. And so you're talking a whole lot of traffic on this gravel road. I understand it's just a short distance, but what's to say folks won't come in from the west instead of the east on this? So I'm just saying the road's going to be an issue with that much traffic on it, a gravel road. So it's going to require more maintenance to even prepare before and after an event like this.
And I talked to a previous Fair Board member, and they said this is exactly something they could do. So I think that's the best plan.
Well, they've held the Shriners Rodeo there at the Leavenworth County Fairgrounds. There's been rodeos before.
Mm-hmm. Plenty of parking.
Have parking.
Traffic's handled well.
On State Highway.
I think we probably need to make clear that the adjoining property owners have reached out to the county commissioners, expressing their concerns because of the event that occurred in October. And I think that had the things not transpired that happened as a result of that, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. But I think that sometimes you have to look at past, what you see from somebody in the past is what you can probably expect in the future. So and I think that the property owners have very clearly expressed that they have concerns regarding this specific location and the respect for the neighbors during the event.
And I've had some people say if this was open to the public, they would like to go attend it if it was at the fairgrounds. Mm-hmm. So I think it would benefit the owner also.
Oh, I agree.
And the fairgrounds, there's plenty of room and plenty of parking.
Plenty of parking.
Well, maybe we have take a motion or.
So I was wondering if I made a motion to approve it if it were at the county fairgrounds, or do we just need to vote on it?
I don't think you can tell somebody
approval.
where. No, that's. Yeah.
That's in the city of Tonganoxie.
Yeah.
And it's at the county.
And we
they don't require
can't tell somebody where they have to. Where they can need to or whatever.
Since it's
zoned appropriately to do that.
Since
already.
It's county-owned property, I didn't know if that was different.
That's in the city.
Yeah, and this is zoned. The property that we're discussing is zoned residential and agriculture, and there's a subdivision, what I would call, because there's a homeowners association, I'm thinking, so it's a fairly organized neighborhood. It's a very established and organized neighborhood that we're talking about here. We're not talking about a large parcel of land and surrounded by large parcels of land.
Mm-hmm. Rocky, you don't see any problem with them having it at the county fairgrounds, do you?
It'll just come before the city council,
Okay.
especially if there's alcohol involved.
Okay. But it's doable, right? Possible.
Right.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Presented.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it was an option to apply for it.
The Shrine Rodeo is there.
I mean, it's set up for that type of thing, specifically.
I think Commissioner Culberson is really offering a good alternative.
Commissioner Stevens want to make the motion, it's his district.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me very well, but I will move that we do not approve case number DEB 22-039, temporary special use permit for Avila Rodeo, located on Cantrell Road, and that we recommend that they move their rodeo elsewhere.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. I'll begin with Commissioner Smith.
Aye. That's to deny.
To deny. Commissioner Stephen.
Aye to deny.
Commissioner Culbertson.
Aye.
To deny.
To deny.
And I vote to deny as well. It's
My
unanimous.
denial is based on the character of the neighborhood and the impact on the neighbors and the traffic, and that this event would be in a residential area.
Thank you.
And this is Commissioner Stephen. I agree with Commissioner Smith's reasoning.
Okay. Well,
Thank you, Commissioners.
use permit has
Thank you.
been denied. Thank you. Next order of business.
Folks, I'm going to drop off and get back into this meeting. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Presentations and discussion items. Quarterly reports. EMS department. Jamie.
Morning, Commissioners.
Welcome.
I've presented quarterly reports for both departments, EMS and Health Department. We'll start with EMS. In the first is to report on the budget. We're right at about 25%. Just as a reminder, in the first quarter, a lot of our yearly expenses that are full year expenses get pulled out, so that kind of miscues that a little bit. So we're really running actually under budget, which is good for the EMS department currently. Collections for user fees, we're at about 23%. We've had a good March collection. We had a little bit of a transitional period. We had a new business manager come in and billing out things of that nature. So I think we're catching up at this point in time. Statistics are just listed out. I'm not going to go over and read everything. The only thing I want to put out on page 3 there, it says call volume statistics 2021. That's actually 2022 first quarter. Same goes for on page 3, number 3 vehicle maintenance is 2022 first quarter. That just didn't get caught. We're at about 17% expenditure on total vehicle expenditures. Overall, you can see all the updates. I've been pretty busy with COVID slowing down a little bit. It's given me the opportunity to get back over into EMS a little bit and diving back in to things that not necessarily have been neglected by me, but have been taken care of by my deputy and such. And I'm able to get back over and oversee some things that I probably haven't been seeing in the last 2 years. One of the big things that I want to kind of point out is just this last month, we've had a pretty unique partnership with the University of St. Mary's. University of St. Mary's has a human anatomy lab, live cadavers. They outreach to us in our training division, and we are able to every single one of our technicians have been able to go over and participate in a human cadaver lab. And that's just something that, that experience and that education is huge for our service. We've gotten a number of kudos back to us from the staff being able to participate in that. and that's going to continue. We've got a pretty good working relationship started with that. So I'm pretty excited in being able to afford that opportunity to our technicians. So that was something, again, with COVID kind of slowing down, give us the opportunity to do some outreach and some in-person training. We've also been able to pick up and resume a lot of our in-person lab training scenarios. Again, we brought in a high-fidelity mannequin, and I offered the commission to come out and see this mannequin, the high-fidelity. Think of a robot. That's about what it is. It blinks, it breathes, it beats. It's pretty unique to be able to perform training scenarios on a mannequin of such dynamic that we haven't had the ability to do in the past. So that's something that we've been picking up quite a bit lately and using that mannequin and getting familiar with it. Michelle's done a phenomenal job with getting that mannequin into our training division. So that's just something I wanted to kind of point out. We also just last week participated in a mock accident down in Tonganoxie, along with several other agencies for that kind of the problem awareness and accident in the influences of drug, alcohol, and distracted driving. So we participated in that as well. Is there any questions out of the EMS report that I presented?
Have you seen an increase of call volume in Bayshore area? If you compare 21 to 22 so far?
With the COVID numbers and kind of, we haven't been able to compare because it's been all over the place on really what EMS runs and pre-hospital runs and such. That's my next month. Is going to be getting back into some other really. I don't like just taking month to month because that doesn't really prove anything. We have to, for statistics, look at kind of a time period. So now that I have all of the first quarter in front of me, I can start pulling previous years and see where we are and what hot spots in the county and start getting back into what I used to do with statistics in our county for EMS runs.
Yeah, I believe Fairmount's had an uptick in calls compared to last year.
We're seeing globally an uptick. Where those calls are at, I haven't dissected that far yet.
Just curious, because of the lack of labor and delivery things, how much use has the EMS gotten of being called out for women in labor or being needed to? Is that working okay for women to get themselves to where they need to be on time? And
yeah, we don't.
Just curious.
We really haven't seen a large uptick in OB call. A lot of the OB, again, why the hospital really removed it was there was already a reduction in people going.
Right. I was just curious because I know that was a concern that had been expressed, and I knew that I had told people that you guys were fully prepared to be able to handle any call like that. However,
we have
I'm just wondering.
A few. But that's EMS.
Right, but that probably done more than before.
I have not seen anything that has sparked an interest for us to say, oh my goodness, we're just having an ungodly amount of OB calls. There's there. We are seeing more and more individuals wanting to be transferred from the 911 setting, the scene setting, to a hospital of distance.
Right. Okay.
But again, that all depends on, can the system handle that? Can we get them there? If you're calling an ambulance and it's an emergency, we're going to get you to the nearest place first, and that's what's going to be offered. We can't always, honor someone's wishes to go from, I'm here and I want to go to KU. Well, I can't bypass 2 or 3 hospitals just because you want to go to KU right at the moment. If you're in an emergency setting, we need to get you to. We're going to get you the closest appropriate facility.
Right. Anything else?
Okay. Moving on to the health department, same thing. The one that I want to express is at the beginning on the budget. The 135 was before March was added into there. We're at 322,878. Again, a number of expenses such as our electronic health records, a lot of the one-time lump fees, subscriptions, things of that nature that are yearly, all are in there, as well as payroll got put into that. So we're at 22% expenditure for the first quarter. One of the things that, since grants are up there, we did submit the aid to local grants. Are under review at the state. But the state approved $800,000 for the entire state for state formula grant, which is in the last, I believe it was 20 years, it has not had an increase in state formula. What that equates to is about $25,000 more coming to the state formula grant to Leavenworth County. So we received it for this current grant year that will end, and then we will see an additional $25,000 for next year. So we were operating at about $54,000 in state formula. That state formula is now going to go up to about $79,000. So that's a plus. State formula can be used to offset any support of local support on any of the other grants. It just can't be matched, but it can be any of the local support. So that will help us in some of those regards that we obviously have out-of-pocket expenses out at the health department that are not being covered by grants. State formula can be used very openly, if you will, to whatever the needs are for each current year. Statistics are on there. ELC grant, one of the things that when I was here last month, kind of giving the report on the ELC grant, we were looking into potentially changing our current electronic health record. The further we looked into it and talking with our vendor currently, we're looking at just making some additional changes and upgrading some things versus completely switching a vendor. That would potentially free up that funding and other funding that we can switch it back. Radios is a huge obvious communication source for us. We used it a ton during COVID. We use radios on a daily basis even within the building. It would allow us to completely replace all of our radio system, and we're currently operating under all of the old radios from when the county made the original switchover. So this would be free funding basically from this grant with no county match, that we would be able to switch out all of our radio options. So I'm in the process of getting that quote together so we can forward that in and get the approval, and I'll be back in front of the board to make that purchase. So I think that's a big thing that we're looking at. The other is the conference room out at the health department. When we took over that, when EMS moved in and we kind of took over the conference room out there, I turned it into a conference room for EMS and the health department to use jointly. The tables, chairs, all of the equipment in that was basically left behind, so it's old furniture that we've been operating and using since 2011, and that furniture is even beyond that. I'm also looking at getting estimates to approve out of this grant to be able to replace all of that equipment as well in there, new tables, new chairs, things of that nature, to kind of bring that up to better standards for our training room and conference room. We use that training room for the health department during COVID as kind of our emergency operations center out at the health department and EMS. So that was kind of a call center. We had phones drop, lines out of the ceiling, the whole 9 yards. So it's really needed, and that furniture really kind of took a beating over that time period. So this would be an opportunity for us to do that. And I'll be back in front of the board once I can get it all together and present it. COVID update. The state has transitioned during the month of April from the pandemic to the endemic. Everybody, I think, is aware of that. In April, that's why we at the health department have stopped putting out our weekly reports for several reasons. The statistics that were coming back to us or available to us were not allowing us to match and put out realistic and accurate statistics and data. The state is no longer universally investigating all cases. So with them not doing some of those parts, negative tests are not being reported. You can't get positive percentages. You can't do a lot of the numbers. So it didn't make sense anymore for us to try to gather data, pull it from all these. We were going to be wasting so much time. So we had to transition over to just really letting even the state has changed their entire website as to what they're reporting out now. So we are still actively involved and engaged in the COVID and dealing with COVID and with the state and everything else. We're still offering every Thursday anyone seeking vaccination, whether that's first shot, second shot, booster, second booster. Have questions on that every Thursday. We do provide that. We're still offering testing, basically 3 days a week. If they call in, we get them scheduled. It is a scheduled thing. It's not just a pull up and I need a test. It is scheduled, but we do provide that. And we're still monitoring. We're still working with the state. Matter of fact, I got to get back. I've got a CDC conference call that I'm going to be getting on with that over some statistics and things. So we're actively busy still with COVID, just not to the extent that we were obviously in January and before. We are monitoring over the last 2 or 3 weeks. We have seen a little bit of an uptick, and that's all in the Kansas City Metro as well. Johnson County, Wyandotte County, they even put out some things that we're seeing a little bit of an uptick. I'm still seeing here in Leavenworth County probably about 5 to 6 cases a day, which is where we kind of were, when we came out of the January down to when we stopped putting out statistics. So we upticked a little bit because we got down to about 3 a day, but now we're about 5 or 6 a day. So not crazy numbers, not insane numbers, but we are still monitoring at least the case load. How many positive cases do we see that are coming through? That obviously does not include at-home tests in those type of things. So that's just where we know from individuals that are reporting that in from pharmacies, doctors' offices, health departments, so on and so forth. That's what I have basically for the quarterly report, and then obviously it's budget time, so I'm also working on budgets on both departments. Any questions that I can answer?
Do we ever anticipate that we'll ever go back to doing the health assessments for all the county employees?
It's funny, yes. I will have that as one of my goals. As soon as that I can have time to look back into that and set that all up, I absolutely will be back in front of the board to seek support of that and move forward with that health assessment.
I think it's worthwhile.
Definitely. I think they caught a couple.
Yes, they
Absolutely.
did. Yes.
Yeah.
There were several things that were caught for individuals that are employees of us and spouses, because we invited spouses on the last time. So yes, I will be pursuing that.
All right, thank you.
I think we're good. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Get over there. Don't be late for your phone call.
Yes.
You got 20 minutes.
He can do
Run.
lights and sirens.
Bob
Okay,
Weber.
now, Bob.
Come
Weber,
on
come on
down.
up.
Thank you.
Mr. Weber.
Weren't you just here?
Hi.
Weber, how are you today?
All right.
Seems like he was just here.
Just now.
I did
Time
hear that.
flies when you're having
Seems like you were just here.
Yeah, I was. We have, we're wrapping up hearings this week, hearings for 2022 evaluation, informal hearings. We had 711, that's about around 2% of the properties, 32,009 properties. We had quite a few that were people that own multiple properties that rent them out, those sorts of things. They come in and appeal them all, so add the counts. But the counts were up, and that was to be expected because of the amount the evaluation increase this year. You can see the last few years what we had for hearings. Personal property, we have to mail out all, and we're working on that. Change of value notices for those renditions that were timely filed. And any renditions that were filed late, we are required to put a penalty on it. And the only the Board of Tax Appeals is the only place that has the authority to abate those penalties for reasons. So none of us here have the authority to abate those penalties. And we are checked by the state that we do apply those penalties for late filers. Disaster, I've put some recent legislation. You guys talked about disaster relief already. I put in our application form so you could see that. We modified it to deal with outbuildings. He will work with we'll send out letters. We have a list of people that we have buildings when we went down to do damage assessment right at a couple days after the tornado hit, and we have a list of buildings. And then we'll try to make sure everybody gets the application that is eligible for a rebate, and we'll try to get that. We'll send those right after we get these hearings wrapped up and that done. You have any questions on that?
So you had 711 informal hearings scheduled out of 32,000 parcels?
Yes.
Okay. Bob, do you remember how many hearings we had in reappraisal that first year?
A lot more than that.
Wasn't it like
Even
12,000 or 20,000? I think it was 20,000 out of 30,000 parcels. We had 20,000 hearings.
Back then, was it?
About 30, probably.
Yeah, it was about, when I came here in 98, it was about 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think
so my point is, it was
50% to 2%.
Yeah, completely different.
It was, even when I first came here, there was significantly more hearings we had at that time. The other legislation, they passed a Homestead that gives some relief for individuals 65 and older. It freezes their property taxes, but it's limited to income of $50,000 or less and the homestead value of $350,000 or less. I was a little disappointed in that because the original amounts were $75,000 income and a $400 and some thousand dollar house. Average sale price of a house in the county is over $400,000.
Right.
So,
it's going to be very few people qualify for that.
to me, this doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
That's what I did. And it also prorates personal property taxes, which we prorated some, but not all of it before. According to law, we prorated boats and vehicles, but nothing else got prorated. So we'll be prorating personal property on and off the tax rolls. It's kind of a double-edged sword because it used to be if you owned it January 1st, you were taxed for that year, no matter how long you owned it in that year. But if you bought it in the middle of the year, you weren't taxed for it that year. You weren't taxed until the next year. But now it's prorated on and prorated off. Only if you buy it after September 1st, you don't pay taxes on it. So that's a little bit of a change, but it at least puts most things on the same schedule. And then the amount of the 20 mil school uniform levy, statewide levy, that exemption amount for residential property was increased from $20,000 to $40,000 in legislation. Again, that was also originally up to $65,000. That mill levy, so it increases that exemption $46 per house to $92. That mill levy was established like in 1992. It was originally like 35 mills. They came down with it right away to 20 mills very shortly after that, and it hasn't moved since. So that mill levy, as values go up, it collects more and more. It goes to schools. It's part of the school, statewide school finance formula. There's been lots of questions on what our oversight has been with the state of Kansas. The Department of Revenue Property Valuation Division, the Director of Property Valuation Division has oversight over us. We are required by law to follow all directives and guidance from the Director of Property Valuation Division and the guides they put out. County appraisers we're required to value every property as of January 1st at its market value. We have an audit that we are audited every year. It's called the Procedural Compliance Audit. The audit consists of two parts. One is a sales assessment sales ratio study. I've talked to you about this before. It's where our values are compared to the sale prices that happen throughout the year, and we have to fall within 10%.
Right.
So if the values go up, we have to try to mirror that, to try to keep pace with that. The second part of that audit is a procedural compliance audit, and I have put in here, it was my last quarterly report to the Property Valuation Division. The third quarter report was due April 15th, and I'll just go over the phases that we are looked at. The first is the scope of work. That's pretty simple. We have to submit basically a scope of work. Every appraisal has to have scope of work, what you can accomplish. The sales file is the second one. And each one of these have due dates that we have to submit information by. We are required to go out to the properties that sell. We have to have a sales file folder, a sales file on each property that sells, with it specified what we have to have in it. It specified that we have to have an inspection on the property. It specifies that we have to measure two sides of the building, how we're supposed to check mark it, down to we have to date and time that piece of paper. And what piece of paper? It's pretty thorough. The parcel maintenance inspection, we're required by law and by the maintenance specifications to view and inspect each parcel once every 6 years. So there's a process we go through to make sure every parcel doesn't skip. We don't miss and go 7 years on a property. We do every parcel once every 6 years. And that is checked by the state of Kansas. And we're required to do a quality control on our individuals to a certain percent. We're required to go back out on those individuals after they've been to the properties to make sure they've done everything right. Residential land analysis. We have to analyze the residential land sales and update our land pricing tables every year and do a neighborhood analysis. We have to do trend studies for land trend studies. We have to do all that. And the same for commercial. We have to do a commercial neighborhood analysis and a commercial land. We have to update our studies, submit our studies, and then we have to make sure we update our tables in the system to make sure we're applying that analysis. One of the things we're required to do is we don't value ag land at market, but we're still required to do an ag land market study. That's by law. That's the reason why we're still required to. It's still in the law, and we're still required to do it. So we do an ag land market, but we don't really use it for anything. But it's not used for tax purposes. The residential multiplier is it's a cost multiplier. We use a Marshall and Swift cost system. You can do a local study. We don't. We just use because we feel they have pretty good for the Kansas City area and the areas around it, pretty good local cost multipliers for in their system. So we just use what they've done the research on. But for residential and commercial. Depreciation analysis, again, we're required to do depreciation analysis for residential homes, manufactured homes, and commercial property. Commercial property, we're also required to do an economic condition factor study also. It's a kind of an outside depreciation, economic depreciation study. And we're required to do an income approach. We're required to gather data. So we send out questionnaires asking income and expenses due to the property on commercial property. Income approach values. Investors typically buy and sell properties based on the income that property produced. So if you know what the income, what the expenses are, and what investors are kind of requiring for rates of return, you can arrive at a value that way by capitalizing that income into a value given a given rate of return. It's part of appraisal procedures. It's part of standard appraisal practice to do that, and we're required to follow that. So we do develop that. We're also required to do a comparable sales approach for residential property. And part of that's those sales, like I said, we gather the data on, make sure we got the correct data on. And then we have to develop this comparable sales approach where we develop adjustments for differences in homes that we are comparing to. One has a garage, one doesn't have a garage, or one has a basement or garage versus an attached garage. What that adjustment would be if we're pulling that as a comparable and adjusting to the subject property. And we're required to go through that phase every year and develop a comparable sales approach. After we develop all those, so the depreciation studies are part of the cost approach, the index, local cost multiplier is part of the cost approach. We develop a cost approach, income approach, market approach. Then we're required to do a final value review, and we value those properties and select a value. That's where we're actually selecting the value. That usually happens about Thanksgiving time to shortly after the first of the year, into January, and then we're required to send change of value notices by March 1st. So it gives some agricultural use valuation. That is not a market value driven system. We apply values given to the state, but we still have to classify that land. We're required every 2 years to verify the current use of the property, whether it's dry land, grassland, that sort of thing. And so we are doing that, and you have 3 methods to do that. You can do it by aerial photographs, comparing current ones to ones 2 years old. You can send questionnaires, or you can do an in-field physical, go out and look at it. Since we've flown new photos every 2 years, we've done that a lot. This year we're going out and doing an infield, 100% infield review this next year. Mapping is carried out mostly by GIS, but is some appraiser's office. We have to apply those in our system. But there's that we have up-to-date maps, parcel maps, identifying ownership. And then there's just the statutory, all the deadlines we have to meet. We have to send change of value notices. We have to publish a trend study 10 days before we send change of value notices in the local paper and on the internet. And certify, hold hearings, have those done by their time frames, and certified to the county clerk. That's kind of covers the whole year we go through. We start,
and starts over again,
certification, and then we start the next year anew, and we go all the way around to certification.
What's an invalid transaction?
Well, that would be
distrust
sale, parents, siblings, not open market, not arm's length.
Foreclosure.
Bank foreclosure. Open market, arm's length transaction. That would be the majority of them, those kinds of things. We really try to err on the side of validating all the sales.
Okay.
But there's...
So if somebody didn't use a realtor and sold it on their own?
That can still be a valid transaction. It doesn't have to go through a realtor. It can be word of mouth. It can be an advertising on the internet. You say newspaper. That doesn't happen as much anymore. The internet. So it can be word of mouth, and that does sometimes happen more in commercial properties.
Now, the information you collect on ag ground, does the state use that when they determine the 8-year average?
Well, they collect that data. They do use our use. We just collect how much is crop and how much is grass. They pull that data and use that in their formula for incomes, but they collect all their own data.
Okay.
K-State does a lot of that research.
Right.
On that.
They'll look at the
Just
numbers
seems
each
kinda odd
year.
that your office has to do some work on it too.
Yeah.
Well, in that 8-year average, they'll figure out which is the highest
Right.
grown crop each year
Right.
from his reports, and then they'll base the values on that. Did you say they're 2 years now for ag review? When you
2 years to do an ag use review.
okay,
Every other year.
because it was every year, wasn't it?
I believe it was at one point.
And they got the new photos for Leavenworth County this year.
They, I believe, do.
So if you talk to them, they can get you a digital set to use if they don't have them to you before you need them for the ag review.
Yeah, we'll work with them.
Okay.
But we're still going to do it in the field this year.
Okay.
And then we're going to start breaking it out every other year. Half county, half the year, half the county the next year. So we're just always doing something.
Do you have any other questions for Bob?
No.
It's a great job. Thank you so much for
Thank
what you
you.
do and for
All right.
keeping up with all of this.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're coming to a place. Do we have any other public comment on the agenda? I don't believe so. So anybody have anything they would like to share before we close?
I went to the Mid-America Regional Council meeting yesterday. They are going to send a letter of support for the Centennial Bridge on there's a raise grant.
Right, the raise grant.
Yeah. And then there's some discussion. There is a housing shortage in the Kansas City area, not just in Leavenworth County. And it's affordable housing, I should say, or moderate housing. But that's what's driving everybody's valuations up. People want to live in this area, and they're overpaying for houses because there is a shortage. I have Bayshore City Council tonight, and I'll have Fairmount Township meeting tomorrow night. I just want to challenge the commissioners to get your budget book out and start looking over the 2022 budget and what we're going to be looking at in 2023. Hopefully, I guess I forgot to ask Mr. Weber about when will the final numbers be in. Will that be into May after all the hearings are done?
Right, so that
the
we can
final
know.
Valuation numbers are.
Last day of
June
April, they
1st.
have to.
By June 1st.
By June 1st, we'll have that number of what the total valuations is. So I'm pretty sure they'll be able to cut the mill levy some. I don't know how much, and nobody right here can tell us how much we're going to be able to cut it until we get them numbers. But ask everyone to look over the line items in these budgets. Just pretty much on the non-elected departments. Look what the inflation has done. Like, I'll just throw public works out there and the fuel and what we've budgeted for. The road oil prices, the asphalt prices. Just start doing some comparisons. We don't, like I said, I know we can lower this mill levy. I know we cannot stay revenue neutral. I don't see there's any way that this county can stay revenue neutral.
Without shedding bridges.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I want everybody to look at, I'm looking at these budgets. If that's what the majority of the board thinks we can do, we have got to make some crazy cuts. And that will require cuts in services. But I would encourage everyone. I mean, we know what our health insurance is. That was a 2-year, I believe that was a 2-year. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
That we already know what that is.
That's
But as
correct.
far as destroying our pay scale and our employee raises, I would highly recommend we don't even look at that. I mean, we have a hard enough time getting employees here
And keeping them.
and keeping them instead of just being a training ground.
We've had 87 employees leave in the last 9 months.
87 out of 400.
It's insane.
That's what I'm asking. That when we're looking at that, let's look at other areas in the budget where we can cut or not increase as much. I mean, but the county's experiencing inflation just like everyone else, and we have to maintain a certain level of service. But can we cut? Absolutely. We can make some cuts. But I'm just saying, I want everybody to spend as much time as think necessary, because
We will.
I know you will. I just want to make sure everybody is. But I mean, I'm doing my due diligence, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it's kind of tough at looking with what we're comparing. And I spend a lot more time on the road and bridge budget than anything. But it's just crazy what the prices have gone up to. But we are a growing county, and we have a lot of new houses coming in. We have a lot of new businesses coming in. We have the money to operate this county and still lower the mill levy.
And we've lowered the mill levy every year this commission's been here. I think we were flat the first year, and then lowered it every year after that.
I've always voted to lower.
And, lowering the mill levy is one thing, but I look at the actual budget itself, and we've come in under the cost of living each year
6%
since we've been here. So it's getting tough to do because we've inherited so many issues.
Leavenworth County's portion of the budget is 27%. So we have school districts and
73% we don't have any control over whatsoever.
Right. But I know this board will do. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page here. I know, but to me, this one's going to be tough. This one's going to be the toughest one I think we've ever been, because we've never had this much inflation. And luckily, our health insurance for our employees is we had a 2-year rate on that. So I believe that's all I have.
I'll just add to what Doug was talking about as far as taxation. I'm meeting Monday night with the Republican Town Hall folks, and May 3rd with the Rural Leavenworth Inc. folks. And my point is to raise awareness in these small groups and try to harness their energy and efforts to focus on how this taxation system works and things that will work to fix it. I think we're starting to make some headway. The long conversation I had with Senator Tyson about putting this task force together, our local state reps are getting on board with us now to understand exactly what the problems are and how to fix them. I think it's just all about education and letting them know what the big fix is. It's easy to yell at the low-hanging fruit and the kill the messenger type thing, but that's not going to fix the actual problem. So I'm hoping reaching out to each one of these small groups is going to actually do some good. If we could get them all on the same page, I think we could actually get something done.
Well, and Mr. Weber earlier was talking about the Homestead Tax. There's not going to be very many people that
qualify.
That won't help.
That's
not much more than we already have that already qualify.
Turning back the local ad valorem tax to the counties that they collect for property tax reduction would help.
And in Governor Kelly's report, did you see that they highly recommended that they do that? And so instead of axing it, they're actually asking them to fund it. So that was a huge step. Most of our local state reps didn't even know what the LAVTR was until we explained it to them a couple years ago. So we're getting there. It's just a long, drawn-out process.
Look at all the dollars that should have came back to Leavenworth County that didn't over the last 20 years.
$2 million a year.
$27 million.
It's like $40 million now.
Yeah, $2 million a year for 18 years. So 36 at least.
36,
that's a whole lot of mill levies.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
And then the only other thing I got is a plug for Council on Aging Meals on Wheels benefit. We're doing July 16th down at Haymarket Square. So all the proceeds from that are going to benefit Meals on Wheels, help them move into the Cushing building, cover some costs there. So we're looking for sponsors if anybody wants to help sponsor that. They'll have a band and activities for the kids and food vendors.
I've gotten 2 sponsors.
Business sponsors?
Yeah,
business
if anybody wants to
sponsors
help
or individuals.
Yeah, it'll be. So there'll be hopefully a big turnout. And it all goes toward Council on Aging and the Meals on Wheels. So
Okay.
And
That's all.
Who do you get a hold
contact
of for the
Scarlett
sponsors?
Scarlett.
Okay.
at the Council on Aging
All right.
for getting the sponsorships or finding people that are interested in.
Okay.
And they will need additional volunteers as well for the event. So anybody that feels like volunteering, that as well. Okay,
I'm
well.
going to have to bail Jeff's hay for him while he's volunteering.
yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, yesterday I did the Workforce Partnership Executive Board meeting. I also on Monday went and had my formal orientation for the transportation KCATA, and so there's a lot to learn there. Nice to be voluntold. And then last evening, attended the City Commission meeting, and I think it's, they'll talk about it, but they did have the discussion of having someone occupy the 6th Street building on Cherokee, which is the past Club Venom, which is really exciting. It will be a microbrewery, so the City of Leavenworth will have a microbrewery here before too many months are over, and it's a very family-friendly business, so that's an exciting thing for the City of Leavenworth. And you did JCAB last week.
We went to Jake and Atchison now.
Yep,
That's
so.
what the comp plan is.
Right,
all
for the
about.
comp
Okay.
plan thing.
Yeah, I forgot I went to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Yeah, make sure it was mine.
yep, yes, and I did the adults last week, so I think that's all we have today, isn't it? We don't have anything else, anything from,
Mike's gone.
Mike's
he's
gone,
gone.
he hung up.
Yeah.
So, I'll entertain a motion
I
to
move that
adjourn.
we adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.